Sri Shankar Maharaj, Chapter 42, Omkarnath Bhasme. Mr. Manohar Pant Pandarpurkar, a resident of Sholapur, was a great devotee of goddess Parvati. He was also a devotee of Sri Shankar Maharaj and was aware of the prowess within Maharaj. Once, he brought his friend Mr. Omkarnath Bhasme to Shubrai Mutt and gave him information about Sri Shankar Maharaj. He also warned Mr. Bhasme that if he wished to bring spiritual happiness in his life, he should meet Maharaj and start worshipping him throughout his life. Mr. Manohar Pant also added that Maharaj is not different from Sri Swami Samarth. Hearing all the praises of Maharaj, Mr. Bhasme met Maharaj. Maharaj blessed him and allowed him to pay homage at his feet. As Mr. Bhasme bowed down at Maharaj's feet, Maharaj gave a thump on his back and ordered him to grind pan. Pan is a betel leaf roll. With the blow, his body was filled with spirit. His life was gifted with a divine guru for whom he had been hunting for a long time. Mr. Bhasme also got the knowledge of self, and his path to divine truth started. Mr. Omkarnath Bhasme was the most loved and the nearest devotee of Sri Shankar Maharaj. Mr. Bhasme always carried Maharaj on his back or shoulders. Once, Mr. Bhasme was carrying Maharaj on his shoulder at the religious place of Thuljapur. Maharaj climbed on Mr. Bhasme's shoulder and placed his foot on his head. Sri Shankar Maharaj gave Mr. Bhasme a lifetime gift on his head. Maharaj gave Mr. Bhasme an impression of his feet in the form of padukas on his head. The impression of Sri Shankar Maharaj's padukas were present on Mr. Omkarnath Bhasme's head till his death. This was the most divine gift ever given by Sri Shankar Maharaj to his beloved devotee. Mr. Omkarnath Bhasme was a cloth merchant by profession and owned a shop. In his business, he had to give 2,000 rupees to one of the merchants from Mumbai. He tried to borrow money from some of his business friends, but all was in vain. So he shared his problem with Shankar Maharaj. Maharaj ordered him to proceed to Gulbarga and borrow the money from Mr. Bhasme's partner. Maharaj also added that his problem of money would be solved there. Mr. Bhasme obeyed accordingly and reached Gulbarga. He borrowed money from his partner and decided to go back to Sholapur. He was unable to get a seat on the bus, so he decided to travel walking. It was almost night, but still he kept on walking. He was frightened because he had money, which made his journey risky. At the very moment, a black, tall man with a long stick in his hand and a mattress on his shoulder started walking with him. Mr. Bhasme was previously scared by the look of the man, but then he started talking with the man about politics. They reached Sholapur and separated on their respective paths. Mr. Bhasme rushed to meet Maharaj. Maharaj at once said, "I had sent Lord Pandurang to keep you company and make you reach safely with the money." Maharaj also described the man's appearance and added that he should have paid homage at his feet. On that, Mr. Bhasme was filled with emotion and fell at Sri Shankar Maharaj's feet with tears in his eyes. Once, while Sri Shankar Maharaj was sitting with Mr. Bhasme, Maharaj shouted, "Hindustan is of Hindus and Pakistan is of Islamis." After a year, Maharaj's words turned out to be true with the partition of India. Maharaj had also predicted Japan's Hiroshima and Nagasaki bomb blast 3 years prior to the occurrence. Once, Maharaj asked Mr. Anna Pansare to bring a pistol. Mr. Pansare brought a firecracker toy pistol. Maharaj ordered him to load 3 dot crackers and brought a photograph of Mr. M.K. Gandhi. Maharaj ordered Mr. Pansare to fire 3 shots at the photograph. Mr. Pansare obeyed accordingly, and after a year the act turned to reality. Mr. M.K. Gandhi was brutally murdered by Mr. Nathuram Godse with 3 gunshots. Once, Maharaj started screaming, "My Narya has gone!" And the next day news reached about the Samadhi of Sri Narayana Maharaj of Kedgaon. Mr. Omkarnath Bhasme had served Sri Shankar Maharaj for many years. On the final meeting before the Samadhi of Sri Shankar Maharaj, Maharaj gave Mr. Bhasme a secret spell in his ear. Mr. Bhasme's life was then filled with knowledge of spiritual matters. Mr. Bhasme missed Sri Shankar Maharaj a lot after the Samadhi. He used to sit near the Samadhi for hours, engrossed in Maharaj's memories. Once, while he was sitting near the Samadhi, he heard a voice from the Samadhi. "I also miss you a lot. You are in my thoughts forever. Look at me." Mr. Bhasme looked at Maharaj's idol and saw Maharaj wearing a turban the way Mr. Bhasme used to wear. Even today, the turban worn by Sri Shankar Maharaj's idol is that of Mr. Bhasme's style. Jai Shankar Maharaj.